Right, so Benjamin Netanyahu once strutted the world stage as if he were the Middle East chess grandmaster, moving pieces at will and outsmarting every rival. Today he looks less like a strategist and more like a man frantically bluffing in a poker game he's already lost. His opponent's holding all the aces, and one of them is openly laughing at him from across the table. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi didn't just call Netanyahu's bluff, he humiliated him with the kind of sarcasm that cuts deeper than any missile strike does. What exactly is Netanyahu smoking? And if nothing, what exactly does the Mossad have on the White House is the caustic quote, gleefully repeated across Arab and Iranian media, humiliatingly scathing as much as being a diplomatic statement. And that's the real sting, isn't it? Netanyahu, once feared as Israel's ultimate security hawk, has been reduced to the punchline of a regional joke, especially by Iran after 12 days of Israel getting pummeled to pieces. This is not merely about bruised egos or Twitter-friendly insults, though. It's a public declaration of something far more significant, that Israel's aura of invincibility has cracked up, that even as a fragile ceasefire holds, Iran now feels confident enough to ridicule rather than placate, and that the man who vowed to stop Iran's nuclear program is instead hiding behind a US-brokered ceasefire, and now in the US, very much as Araghchi also allegedly put it, having run to daddy. The Middle East has a long memory for humiliation, and right now, Netanyahu is getting rinsed by one of Iran's top officials. Right, so Abbas Araghchi has given Netanyahu an absolute beasting on social media, having posted in response to Netanyahu's recent interview on Fox News that Netanyahu pledged victory in Gaza almost 2 years ago. The end result? Military quagmire, facing arrest warrant for war crimes and 200,000 new Hamas recruits. In Iran, he dreamed that he could erase 40-plus years of peaceful nuclear achievements. The end result? Every one of the dozen Iranian academics that his mercenaries martyred had trained 100-plus capable disciples. They will show Netanyahu what they are capable of. But his arrogance doesn't stop there. Having miserably failed to achieve any of his war aims in Iran and compelled to run to daddy when our powerful missiles flatten secret Israeli regime sites, which Netanyahu is still censoring, he is openly dictating what the US should or shouldn't say or do in talks with Iran. Apart from farce that Iran will accept anything a wanted war criminal has to say, the inevitable question arises, what exactly is Netanyahu smoking? And if nothing, what exactly does the Mossad have on the White House? Yeah, that's a burn. Like applying napalm to a nappy rash, isn't it? For a man who built his entire political career on projecting strength, Benjamin Netanyahu's reputation is collapsing in real time. The man once hailed as Mr. Security, the supposedly unflinching defender of Israel, has become the target of open ridicule by Iran's foreign minister. Araghchi's comment was not an offhand insult, it was a calculated act of humiliation designed to underline a stark new reality. The balance of power between Israel and Iran has shifted. Iran now feels emboldened not only to retaliate militarily, but to mock Israel's Prime Minister publicly, knowing full well that Netanyahu has little meaningful response, yet can still somehow manage to maintain a straight face whilst making demands of Iran. Those demands having been made risibly on Fox News, which elicited Araghchi's derisive response, being that he would support an exceptional deal with Iran that demanded non-nuclear enrichment, no ballistic missiles with a range of more than 300 miles and no terror axis, as he put it. But he's in no position to demand anything, is he? He lost. He got his backside handed to him. It took Trump to step in and stop Iran's brutal assault with a ceasefire they weren't involved with, but magnanimously agreed to nonetheless. And yet Netanyahu would start it again in a heartbeat. This exchange is more than a diplomatic spat. It encapsulates the deep strategic failures of Netanyahu's Iran policy, his growing domestic desperation, and the psychological confidence Tehran now enjoys. It also reveals a broader regional transformation. Israel's aura of military invincibility is cracking, its diplomatic standing is deteriorating, and Iran has learned to leverage both its military resilience and information warfare to maximum effect. The question then is not whether Netanyahu is smoking something, therefore, as Araghchi sarcastically suggested, but rather why he continues to posture as if he holds any leverage at all. The answer to that lies in his failed Iran strategy, his dependence on US intervention, and his need to sustain a domestic political image that no longer matches reality. When Netanyahu appeared on Fox News, he presented what he described as Israel's exceptional deal conditions for Iran, no nuclear enrichment of any kind, no ballistic missiles with a range greater than 300 miles, and full dismantling of Iran's regional alliances, which he habitually calls this terror axis, delivered with his usual air of certainty as it was. The demands were absurd in both content and timing. Netanyahu was not speaking to Tehran, though. He was speaking to Washington. He was speaking to his own domestic base. The Fox News platform was not chosen at random. It is the favoured network of US conservatives, AIPAC donors and Trump-aligned voters, all of whom form critical components of Netanyahu's international political support system. For his dwindling right-wing base back in Israel, this performance was designed to present him as the only leader still willing to stand up to Iran. For Trump and Republican hawks, it was a reminder that Netanyahu remains their staunchest Middle Eastern ally. For AIPAC donors, it was reassurance that he would not compromise on their hardline expectations. But the world outside this carefully curated audience is anything but convinced. The demands rang hollow, because Netanyahu had already failed to achieve them through force. Worse, they ignored the facts on the ground. Iran fully plans to resume nuclear enrichment as soon as it can, and it can. It's not likely to declare exactly when that is now either, having booted out the IAEA. Its missile program very much remains intact, with systems now combat-proven after striking inside Israel. Battle-tested, as Israel would put it, but in actual battle, not used against captive Palestinians as Israel do to make such a claim. Far from being dismantled, the so-called terror axis is thriving. In Gaza, Hamas has not only survived, but expanded its recruitment dramatically. Araghchi twisted the knife, mocking Netanyahu's once grand promises. The end result, military quagmire, facing arrest warrant for war crimes, and according to him, 200,000 new Hamas recruits, which does seem rather high to me, given previously quoted Hamas numbers, I have to say. But the contrast between Netanyahu's rhetoric and reality could not be starker. Whether his predecessors might have been able to project power through carefully controlled messaging, Netanyahu is now selling a fantasy that even his allies must privately know is impossible to deliver. The failures underpinning Araghchi's competence are not abstract. They're rooted in specific, glaring miscalculations that have left Netanyahu's Iran strategy in absolute tatters. Netanyahu's entire approach was built on the premise that Israel could replicate past military successes against emerging nuclear threats, just as it destroyed Iraq's Sirak reactor in 1981 and Syria's suspected nuclear facility in 2007. Israel would cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions through precision strikes and sabotage as well. But Iran is not Iraq, and it's not Syria. Its nuclear program is much larger, widely dispersed, and deeply entrenched, with many facilities, as we now know, buried far underground. The 12-day war strikes on Iran by Israel demonstrated that reality. While some surface-level infrastructure was destroyed, Iran has publicly boasted of its likely rapid recovery, certainly compared to Israeli and US claims. We'll soon see who's right, won't we? The assassination campaign Netanyahu often bragged about similarly backfired. Over the past decade, Mossad operatives are widely believed to have eliminated multiple Iranian nuclear scientists, including Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in 2020, and very much accelerated during last month's attacks as scientists became key targets. But as Araghchi gloated, every assassination seems to have inspired a new generation of Iranian scientists, and certainly that's quite believable, isn't it? With each senior figure allegedly training 100+ capable disciples. Iran has effectively institutionalized its scientific expertise, therefore, ensuring that the loss of individuals no longer cripples its program, though again these claims and the truth of them remain to be seen, but who would rule them out? The most damaging failure, however, was Iran's direct missile retaliation. Iranian forces launched coordinated strikes on sensitive Israeli military installations. For years, Israel's layered air defense systems, Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow 3, were believed to make such strikes virtually impossible, yet Iranian missiles got through, cut through them like a hot knife through butter. Time after time they did it, striking key radar installations, causing widespread military and infrastructural damage. And although Netanyahu's government imposed strict media censorship, leaks via social media and from within Netanyahu's command structure even suggested the damage was far worse than officially admitted. Araghchi's taunt about flattening secret Israeli regime sites and Netanyahu being forced to run to daddy in Washington cut to the heart of this embarrassment. If the missile strikes exposed Israel's vulnerabilities, the Trump-brokered ceasefire just cemented Netanyahu's humiliation. Publicly, Israeli officials claimed they accepted the truce to preserve regional stability. Privately, few doubted the truth, though. Israel was eager to halt further Iranian strikes that it was clearly struggling to stop. Trump's intervention was telling. On one level, it reflected Washington's desire to avoid a wider regional war that could destabilize oil markets and undermine Trump's re-election messaging of being a peacemaker. especially after he himself ordered bunker busters dropped on Iranian nuclear research site at Fordo. On another level, it hinted at growing US impatience with Netanyahu and his adventurism. For Netanyahu, though, this was devastating. His entire political persona rests on being the man who can defy international pressure and act unilaterally to protect Israel. Mr. Security. Being forced into a ceasefire by an American president, especially one he had cultivated as a political ally, was a personal and strategic blow. Within Israel, murmurs of discontent have only grown louder as a result. Retired generals questioned the wisdom of provoking Iran in the first place, and opposition politicians openly accused Netanyahu of reckless mismanagement. Iran's growing leverage is not just military, it's political, diplomatic, and psychological. Militarily, Tehran has achieved what once seemed impossible, though: credible deterrence against Israel. The knowledge that Iranian missiles can penetrate Israel's defences, combined with a widespread belief that Iran was still holding back, changes the regional calculus now. For decades, Israel operated on the assumption that it could strike any of its neighbours with impunity. That era is clearly now over. Diplomatically, Iran, therefore, is the one gaining momentum. The rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, deepening ties with BRICS, and outreach to Gulf states that all signals that Tehran is increasingly viewed as a legitimate regional power to do business with now. Meanwhile, Israel is facing unprecedented isolation. The International Criminal Court arrest warrant against Netanyahu has tarnished his image, even amongst some Western allies. Psychologically, Iran is winning the war of narratives too. Araghchi's public mockery, a true example of information warfare in that regard. By ridiculing Netanyahu as delusional and implying Mossad blackmail over the White House, perhaps not much of a stretch either, Epstein files anyone, he fed into a long-standing suspicion across the region that US policy is dictated by Israeli interests. More importantly, he projected confidence. Iran is no longer reacting defensively to Israeli or US threats. It is setting the narrative and defining the terms of public debate. So despite these failures, Netanyahu continues to posture as if he holds the upper hand because his political survival basically depends on it. Domestically, though, he faces a perfect storm. The Gaza war is an absolute mess. His coalition partners are restless. He's just lost one of them over his draft bill, and the ICC has labelled him a war criminal. Against this backdrop, Iran serves as a convenient distraction once again. By playing up the threat of Tehran once more on US TV, Netanyahu hoped to rally nationalist sentiment and present himself as Israel's indispensable protector, rather than the biggest regional antagonist going. But this strategy carries risks. Israeli opposition figures and retired military officials are increasingly vocal in their criticism. Some accuse Netanyahu of prioritising political theatre and his own self-interest over national security. Not wrong either, in my view, arguing that his reckless Iran policy has weakened Israel's deterrence rather than strengthening it. Even amongst his supporters, questions are being asked: if Netanyahu cannot deliver on his promises against Iran, what remains of his claim to be Mr. Security? The implications of this shift extend far beyond Netanyahu's personal political future. The erosion of Israel's deterrence credibility is altering regional dynamics. Gulf states, once wary of Iran, are recalibrating their policies to accommodate them instead. Resistance groups like Hezbollah, Hamas and the Houthis become more emboldened, sensing that Israel is no longer as invulnerable as it once appeared. For Washington, the episode raises more uncomfortable questions. How much longer can the US underwrite all of Netanyahu's aggressive policies, especially if they keep repeatedly backfiring? For Iran, the challenge will be to avoid overconfidence. Public mockery of Netanyahu plays well domestically and in the region, makes for a good YouTube video too, but it carries risks as well. A cornered Netanyahu might gamble on escalation to restore his deterrence credibility, and Iran must calibrate its moves carefully to avoid giving him that opening. We know he's looking for it, after all. Netanyahu's Fox News appearance was meant to project strength. Instead, it just underscored his weakness. His demands to Iran are not serious diplomatic positions, but hollow bluster designed for domestic and donor consumption. Iran, by contrast, has proven resilient militarily, gained diplomatic legitimacy, and mastered the art of psychological warfare. Araghchi's mocking question, what exactly is Netanyahu smoking, is more than a taunt. It is the symbolic epitaph of Netanyahu's myth of invincibility. The strategic balance in the Middle East is shifting. Israel's deterrence is no longer unchallenged. Its prime minister is mocked rather than feared, and its enemies are growing bolder. The question now is not whether Iran will accept Netanyahu's unrealistic demands, but how much longer Netanyahu can maintain this fantasy before even his closest allies stop pretending to believe it. For more on how Netanyahu's coalition is cracking up, the departure of United Torah Judaism over the Haredi draft bill, leaving Netanyahu with a majority of just one seat in the Knesset, potentially heralding the government's imminent collapse as another ultra-Orthodox party is eyeing that up. Check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.